And welcome to... I have an echo. Welcome to This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Reno, editor of This Week in Worcester. I am here with my dear partner in Gab, Mr. John Edward Keogh, and we are here with a single item on our agenda. We usually have three, and we only have one today. And the topic of conversation will be the absolute circus that the Worcester City Council is being turned into. It is frankly embarrassing, to be perfectly honest with you.
It's insane. It's literally insane.
And we'll walk through it a little bit, but I just want to start with the position that it is not actually the councilors elected to the Worcester City Council that are creating this circus, but they're responsible for it. Because I've just never seen, like, look, I don't pretend to be an expert on government or anything like that, but I've studied stuff. Like I'm a bona fide nerd, and this journalism gig comes with, you got to study stuff because you have to understand it to write it, right? And so I mean, I've had my face in books more than your average bear, in like studying different parts of the world, and I was first interested in foreign stuff long before I came to journalism. Whatever. I'm just saying I've seen some stuff related to government, and I've never ever seen an elected body more like almost terrified of power or exercising any of the power that they actually have the sole right to exercise. It's truly stunning. They won't even control their own meetings. They just refuse to control their own meetings. And they allow people from outside the council in the administration to have almost total control over what goes on the agenda. And it's now turned into an absolute circus.
Yeah.
And you, Mr. Keogh, were a clown in the original circus that started this trend of absolute stupidity.
I actually put makeup on and everything and pantomimed, and it was bad. You know what I'm saying?
You had the audacity to petition your local government back in May. How dare you?
Terrible guy that I was.
And am.
I am. I'm horrible. Horrendous human being.
So you were, as many people know, part of the city's cable advisory committee, which its job was to review compliance of the wonderful company that we have delivering cable services in the city, Charter Spectrum, which everybody loves. And you were the chairperson of the committee that reviewed that contract. Your committee issued a report that said they have screwed us every way, which way to Sunday, and openly violate the contract in almost as many ways as humanly possible.
Still doing it.
And if they don't, they're still doing it. And if they don't rectify this stuff, the city manager should deny renewal, which does not mean there will be no cable TV in Worcester, which is what the administration keeps saying is the possibility, which isn't a thing. It's a lie.
It's complete. It's literally impossible.
Right.
It's impossible.
Right.
Legally,
it is not
impossible.
Short of that massive company going belly up suddenly, that's just not going to happen. And it's not a thing the city can make happen.
And by the way, even if they did it, it doesn't mean Spectrum wouldn't end up with the contract. It just means that we would have tools that we're legally allowed to have as a municipality to review them. But it's really not about the cable thing. It's just about the process of petitioning our local government.
Right. Just wanted to give some background on what the story was. Yeah. And then the city manager put out a blog post and basically appeared to, although we tried to walk it back later in a very unbelievable manner, in a way that wasn't believable. He put out a blog post that basically said, "Yeah, thanks for all your hard work for 2 years, but I decided in 2 months that we're just going to renew this," and then of course tried to walk it back. Right. And so you and all but one of the members of that committee resigned in protest. And then after you've resigned from this commission, you then petitioned your city council, hoping to force a vote by the city council in support of the committee that you were on's conclusions. And tell me what happened when you submitted that petition for the city council's agenda.
I was denied. We were denied. we were denied for initially. The initial reason was that I couldn't ask the city council to direct the city manager to do something differently than he had already done. But I didn't do that. It wasn't written to say that. And according to his public position, he hadn't done the thing that I was trying to recommend against, according to him. So all I was asking the city council to do was to take a vote and come and get on the record to recommend whether they wanted Spectrum to be renewed or not. That's it. And well within my rights as an individual. Charter change, absolutely, Shawnee. That's how we get it done now in Worcester. We can just request charter changes, which is interesting because we're not currently in charter change, but apparently the city solicitor thinks that is a thing. But so then I was denied, and then when we went to the council anyways, and what we did was I spoke on an item that was about cable on the agenda that night. In particular, and just so you know, every single week, if I wanted to, there's an agenda item that has cable involved, because Spectrum has to, by law, get the city council to approve them to get access to junction boxes around the city. If they need to open the ground, if they need to do different things, they need to have those things approved regularly to function as a license holder, right? It's different for other companies, but for them as a license holder, they have to get that approval almost every single week. And so I could go on there this week, and they'll probably be, it's usually in the 7A, 7B. And a lot of times those items are taken up as a roll call vote, and it's just 11-0 every single time. And my strategy has been to try to get the city councilors to stop doing that, because they don't have to do that. They can actually have an up and down conversation on those items and start making Spectrum actually work. Come to the meetings, Spectrum, send a representative, explain to us why this, that, the other thing. That was my entire strategy, was to get Spectrum to engage. Because as the chair of the committee, they were not engaging with us at all. And based on the city manager's letter that was there last week, they still continue to not engage and to do shady nonsense, right? But that was yes, last week. We're still talking about 5 months ago. So then when I spoke, the city solicitor then responded, and I'll let Tom explain the city solicitor's response back then.
Gobbledygook. It absolutely made it. So first they cited when they responded to you, of course you sent the email to me. When they responded to you, they cited a Supreme Court case that was based on government. It was from the LA District Attorney's Office. They fired an employee who provided information that to the defense in a case because they thought the warrant, they had a problem with the way the case was being prosecuted. So they tried to help the defense, and the prosecutor there fired that person. And so that person sued for wrongful termination. This is after the fact now. He did a thing and then he was fired. That's an important point. So a wrongful termination case. And the Supreme Court found that because they found that he was acting within the scope of his employment, and because it was within his employment, that does limit his speech rights, right? Because he's operating in an area in which he works, and when he's contradicting the policy of his boss, that's then an employment issue. It's not a speech issue. That's what they found. And, I can see that, okay? But the point was, it was a wrongful termination case. And then the court ruled that he was not terminated wrongfully. How they turned that, and then it all changed. And then we got to council at Tuesday, and it was gobbledygook and something about the conflict of interest laws, which I don't see how that applies. And something about, well, I've never seen this before, so that's apparently he's the arbiter of all that is right.
Even though the Human Rights Commission had put a similar petition, not within a year of mine, a very similar petition that he had never seen before then as well. The second time in a year. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I forgot about that actually.
Yeah.
And so what they never explained though, what they never made sense of, is how someone who is now resigned from the committee
still resigned,
have their right and how they could, what mechanism, any of these things that they cited, this range of gobbledygook that they cited, could be used to preempt, to prevent you from speaking. There was plenty of precedent there on what they cited, that once you spoke, they could have said you were no longer on the committee. Of course, you would have resigned, right? They could have released you from that, from your responsibility, or from what you were appointed to. They had every right to do that. But the idea that they used that to preempt your speech, to prevent you from saying a thing, is invented out of thin air. That's the only way you can describe it, because there is nothing there there's nothing in what they decided that would allow them to actually prevent you from speaking. You say what you want. You are not. You are free to say what you want. You are not free from the consequences of saying it.
And by the way,
but apparently this isn't America to them.
That week, a city councilor, in this case, District 1 councilor Jenny Pasio, put an item on the agenda to ask for the city manager to basically explain why Spectrum wasn't giving the two big issues that I was, as the chair, I was talking about. They weren't, one, providing information, and it looks like they haven't actually paid the city the last 2 years. That's neither here nor there. That's another future thing that we're going to deal with. Maybe if they do sign a contract, there is actually a process for a citizen's petition to the state, because there's the cable division, and I could potentially prevent the license from going into place. Just a little preview of my overall strategy for anybody who's watching, city councilors. So I asked about that. And then the second thing, and the really more important thing, is why Spectrum was allowed to unilaterally take a discount for senior citizens and disabled folk out of the license, despite the fact that it's never actually been taken out of the license. They just stopped providing the discount. And they
was in a contract. They contracted to provide this discount and then just decided they weren't going to anymore.
That's right. And their reasoning was this decision by the FCC in 2015, which really did deregulate cable, right? And so they determined that the municipalities could no longer set rates. Because if you remember, just about 10 years ago, the city used to set the rates for cable, right? So the city would, every year there would come to be, these numbers, and they would set it. It was something that was negotiated year to year. Sometimes they would have a 2-year contract, but generally speaking, it was every other year they would set prices for the cable rates. And that was how Massachusetts was for many years. Very similar to how the insurance rates are still regulated in Massachusetts, although that has changed as well. And they took that power away from the whole country. No one could do that anymore. And Spectrum took it another step and said, hey, this is rate regulation, this discount, and so therefore we're not going to follow that. Now, every single version of that around the country that has made it to court, the company has lost in that. And that has happened a bunch of times. It's too long for Tom and I to go through every single one of those cases. It's just too much. But generally speaking, a negotiated discount has been determined by the courts not to be a rate regulation, because Spectrum or Verizon or Comcast, they don't have to agree to a discount. It's something the municipality asks for in a negotiation. We would like you to provide this to our constituents. And then if you don't, we'll go find another company, basically is where it is. But it's not an actual rate regulation. It's just a general number that the company agrees to. In this case, it was 10%.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah.
So they stole money from seniors and disabled people.
Yes.
And that
they have not paid them back.
No, they not even paid it back. They haven't even given, at least as far as we know, haven't even provided a number that they were going to pay back.
So last week, I want to give credit to Councilor Candy Merrill Carlson, who made a very impassioned speech related to this particular issue last week, late in the night of the council, when she used this phrase, which I've never heard. They're trying to snow the snow lady. I don't know what that means, Candy. That was pretty cool, though. But basically, she pointed out that Spectrum has not provided the information that that Jenny Pasio had asked for, and it was voted 11-0 back in May, which was for Spectrum to show how many disabled and elderly folks were affected by this discount denial, which of course is
let's stop going down the charter, because we got a bunch of stuff to get to here. Let's stop going down the charter rabbit hole. They're the worst company in the world. We know that. No, don't be sorry. I just want to kind of, I don't want to get off topic here
You have time to go on other stuff.
Because a lot's happened. So that was in May.
Yeah.
And then and let's just be honest about what happened with your petition in May. You wanted City Council to take a vote basically on supporting your report, the committee that you led's report, that said that charters absolutely screwed us in every way possible.
That it was a good report. That the work was valid. That's it, really.
Yep. And so now you put City Council in a position where they have to choose the company, Charter Spectrum, which absolutely everyone hates. Or that's too strong. Not absolutely everyone, but I mean, they are widespread reviled in a widespread way.
Yes, they
are. And so now you have council in a position where you are asking them to essentially to vote with the city manager is in that scenario, in that snapshot of time, is asking them to vote with charter. And that's a tough place. In a very smart place, by the way, it was well orchestrated to put a city councilor in. Is to, of course, they want to vote against charter. And if that vote, that's a tough place that they're in. And the city council voting essentially against the position of the city manager is a very difficult political spot for the city council to be in. Now, because of the city council's rules, specifically Rule 11, which allows the solicitor, if the clerk takes agenda items that are questionable to the solicitor makes the decision. The solicitor, and people start to glaze over when I start to explain this, and I don't know why you don't think it's important. Like, I realize
it's
the founders, I realize that the founders of this country were very flawed men, right? Because, regardless of what the hell the law said, slavery was always bad. Doesn't matter if it was legal or not at the time, was always bad. And so no dispute that these were flawed men. They were, however, probably the world's foremost experts on government and political philosophy at the time, okay? And they built in this system of co-equal separate branches in which Massachusetts, by law, a city has a executive branch which operates the government and a legislature, the city council, okay? Towns don't work like that. Towns work differently. And when you start to, and it says right in the city charter, branches, and that has a connotation of this principle that's in the Massachusetts Constitution that was very influential in the creation of the U.S. Constitution, that these are separate co-equal entities. The solicitor works for the city manager. He's making decisions based that are within the total purview of the city council. That is direct executive interference in the city council, which is supposed to be equal and independent. And the city council's own rules, which they made, allows this. And so it put the city solicitor, whose job is, despite what the city manager might try to pretend it is, his job is to represent the administration, which, of course, deals with the operations of government. So it would be unethical for him as a lawyer. And according to the same Supreme Court case that they cited for you not to be on the agenda, that makes any disagreement that the solicitor expresses with the city manager a legally fireable offense. Guess what? He's not going to do that.
Right. He can't. He's in the position where he cannot ever really disagree publicly with the city manager without risking his job. Now, if to be honest, now whether it's Eric or it was Ed Augustus or Mike O'Brien, because Mike Traynor has been the city solicitor for quite some time, it would, if they were a good boss, they would allow their employee to disagree with them in public. In my opinion, it makes you not a good boss if you don't allow dissent, if you don't allow people to countermand you.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Robust
dissent internally is one thing. Once the decision is made and you go public, that's the team's decision. If you don't like it, you can quit, and then you can talk about it.
Yeah. I guess I think that's part of the reason why we're here. Like, you're not allowed to talk about it. We all have to be on the team, the same page. But anyways, that's another.
Hold on. That's actually a very important point. But that's why we have a separate and co-equal branch of government to do that oversight, to bring contradictions or problems or whatever with what the administration policy is to the public. And that's how this is supposed to work. That's why you have a separate, insulated, separately and co-equal branch to deal with exactly that. So the city manager's team can work for him. And then we have but right from the start, the city council just allows. This is why it's the city council's fault. I don't blame the solicitor for doing his job, which is advocating for the administration led by the city manager. I blame the city council for allowing it to happen. It sets its own rules, and they allow this.
So I agree with that, but I will say this: the power dynamics, the value sets that exist in that building are so imbalanced that it's unbelievable. And I'll just give you a perfect example. Because Manny and I went and interviewed Mayor Petty the other day. And I've been to the mayor's office when it was Tim Murray and Connie and my whole life. If you go to the city hall in Worcester, generally speaking, the door to the mayor's office is open. Generally speaking, and there's a room when you go into that office, and it kind of opens wide. And there's always been the mayor's team and the names, the administrators, chief of staff, secretaries. The names have changed over the years, but usually you could kind of pop in the door. We're a small city, and that's where you would discuss it with the team. The city manager's office has a hallway, right? And a separate door that is generally closed behind the person who is the city manager's administrative assistant / secretary. And that person usually has to go in a door, down a hallway to the other office to knock on another door to go into the city manager. So the city manager is kind of kept away, and the mayor is more like the public facing, that kind of deal. It makes a lot of sense. It's actually not a bad design, but here's why I think it's bad. The mayor makes nothing even remotely close salary-wise as the city manager, and it's been that way for many, many, many years. So the value proposition that exists visually, and then with that knowledge that the thing is that the city manager makes so much, he's too important and busy to have to deal with the public. Right. And so that power dynamic exists in the building, too, because the city councilors are then down the hallway in a corner office tucked into this little tiny bifurcated room. Yeah. And it's just, it sets this up that they actually feel like they have to go with whatever that administration says. And I'm not saying every city councilor, because there have been city councilors and there are city councilors on our on the city council right now that do fight back publicly. So good for you. And that power dynamic is very, very difficult to fight back against. I understand. But the fact of the matter is that city hall is set up so the dynamic is shifted into one office and one office alone.
We might as well call him the God King.
Yeah, it's so difficult and it's so understandable. So the problem that we have, of course, is in a way I'm arguing for the city councils to have a more robust role, right? Full-time, more money, a fuller staff, their own attorneys. And in my opinion, and I think, Tom, you agree with me in parts of this, is that I would reduce the city manager's role much more. Now, how that is developed, there's a bunch of arguments legally and how we would create the government here in Worcester and redo it and rewrite it, right? But at least one thing is clear. The city council does not have enough authority, and its authority is definitely superseded by the city manager's authority. It's clearly there. And I don't know how anyone can argue that, even city councilors and other people, that they can argue that the city manager is not 100%, almost 100% in total control of the city of Worcester.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and, well, that's another. I mean, this administration, and so everything I said before is kind of the structure of the thing and how it kind of works, how the structure is played out into working. And that's not really specific to anybody. And I'm saying the council as a whole, there are people that push back, but I mean, I understand there are vastly different political, ideologies on council, but like there's all if anything you're going to be unified on, it should be protecting the power of your own role, for God's sake.
For sure.
And they're just allergic, like they're almost afraid of power. It's really crazy. But this administration has signaled to them loud and clear, we are going to take as much power as you let us take. And the administration, I mean, in the city council just seems fine with that. I mean, this administration came to the Florida City Council and really argued that because council doesn't have its own lawyer, it uses the solicitor. That means to have an ordinance written, it has to go request the city manager to request the solicitor to write that, because that's the only lawyer they have. And they really argued that although in the city charter, the foundational document of city government, although the legislative function is exclusively delegated to the council, this administration argued that it doesn't have to provide it with a requested draft of an ordinance for them to debate. That's the most absolute. I mean, that's like the attorney general telling the House of Representatives, either at the state or the federal level, you can't actually write your own bills. It's nuts. It is crazy. Such a perversion of the actual system that we have. It's disgusting.
And the crazy thing is, and I understand why the city councilors would want to have legal advice for writing an ordinance, but they're actually elected to write ordinances. It's part of their purview to write the law that the city manager's job is to execute. So it's very, very interesting dynamic. But again, it goes back to this weird thing where we don't want to be seen having to make public choices, so we're kind of okay with this other person making all the public choices. And let me take the next, like, I don't want to go too far down like it's everybody's crooked and everybody's bad. What I want to say is this, from a benevolent perspective, a benevolent dictator's perspective, there's this imagery that Eric and Ed and Michael Bryan, so it's not like unique to Eric, have always presented that they know best for the city. Right, that their vision, their strategy is the best one, and because the city council hired them, the city agrees with that vision. That's the articulated.
It's insane. It's really like the level of I don't even know what to call it. Like the level of gravitas you exude with that perspective is insane. You know why city council goes? This is really why city council goes along with everything. Because they don't have any resources.
They have no way to fight back. They're completely limited in many, many ways to 5 minutes of rhetoric on a particular topic, on a particular order, on a Tuesday.
Because they want to. Because someone want to get out of there
every Tuesday. And then the only other way they can really express themselves is out in the public, field, like whether they go on the media or they in committee meetings, hearings. But it's very difficult for them, because they're limited. And by the way, they've voted to limit themselves more. they're literally allowing themselves to be cut off. And I'm not saying, but when we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and someone asked me if I was saying this, I'm not saying that I want all the city council meetings to go to 2:00 in the morning. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm saying that robust conversation about important matters is important for the city, and so these 11 this group of people should be given opportunity to talk more and express the concerns, needs, wants, desires, achievements of their constituents. As much as last Tuesday was an absolute horror show, at the beginning of last Tuesday there was a young girl who was celebrated for this achievement in tap dance, which is not something we all hear about all the time. And that did not really get even a second of coverage because of what was coming.
The dumpster fire that I sued. Yeah. So, so then it's like, so there's your position in May, as we discussed, and then it goes kind of quiet for a little bit. There was nothing all that circus like going on. And then the circus was back in town last Tuesday.
It was full with elephants and everything. Like that, like what I did there. Like what I did there.
So when the Worcester Republican City Committee or members of it submitted a petition, and long story short, they wanted Immigrants who became citizens, naturalized citizens, right? They moved to this country and earned their citizenship. They wanted to set different standards for them as far as what they had to prove in documentation. There was a lot of talk about show me your papers last week. So they wanted to set a different standard for naturalized citizens, people that immigrated here and became citizens, versus natural-born citizens. And stunning to me was absolutely stunning to me. And I talked to a few lawyers about this. I put it in my piece on the subject, and they didn't really want to be mentioned because they didn't want to get too deep into city politics, but in public at least. But they all told me, the petition asked for a charter change to enable these changes that plainly violate the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment was ratified basically to end the legal argument to slavery, and it in short says we don't do different classes of citizens. So, for example, in that scenario, we don't have the white people as one class of citizens, and then the people that were bought as slaves to be worth only 3/5 of a person for census purposes. We don't do that anymore. We have one class of citizens. This clearly violates that. When you start putting different requirements on people because of their citizenship, because of where they were born, that is plainly unconstitutional, because we don't do that. You are either a citizen of the United States or you are not. There are no other options. And the solicitor managed to get out of his mouth that I don't see this as unconstitutional on its face, which is laughable. Which is literally laughable.
Not only laughable, but Tom, there's decisions literally this year at federal, state, and not local levels, obviously Worcester's the local, that have countermanded directly the solicitor's thought there. Completely repudiate what he's saying. And I know that the city solicitor has an account paid for by the city with the company LexisNexis. I don't know if anybody knows what LexisNexis is, but LexisNexis is a law search function tool, right? That almost every lawyer in the world uses. It's a massive, massive database. And if the reason you'll know that we know why we have that is because Councilor Russell brought that up earlier this year during the budget debates and mentioned specifically this tool. Some of us, maybe me, took it as a dig towards his fellow Councilor Bergman and his insistence on using Google for searching for legal decisions, right? But so, anyways, however you want to take it, we know that the city solicitor has LexisNexis. Here's the best thing about this. The Arizona voting case, which is where the Arizona legislature tried to pass a new test to prove your voting rights, right? So that means me as an individual, me and Tom walk up and we want to vote, and there's a new test that wanted to be put in place, right? And if you remember the headlines, it said the Supreme Court said yes, but if you actually go read the case, the Supreme Court allowed parts of the law that already existed to continue, and they rejected parts of the law that were new and sent it back to state court. So it wasn't a decided case. But the specific part they rejected, they cited the 14th Amendment as it didn't have a due process clause, part one, and it created an extra test for citizenship proof, which is illegal under the 14th Amendment. It's been argued 1,000 times. That happened this year, and it was the featured case on LexisNexis. This is a fact check that you can fact check me on, which is awesome. It was featured on LexisNexis for 60 days as one of the top cases, because if you go on LexisNexis, they have these top cases, and they have all the arguments, and then people put articles in there, and they argue back and forth. And so it would be really bad, in my opinion, if the city solicitor did not at least read the headline that said that a two-standard case for proving your citizenship is on its face. And the Supreme Court used the term in Latin, which is something Tom and I have been throwing around, prima facie, illegal and unconstitutional. It's literally in that case. And so for And by the way, I heard the mayor go on the radio and talk about that and say it's not illegal on its face because the city solicitor is saying it is, but it is illegal on its face, and it has been affirmed by this current ultra-conservative Supreme Court. What are you doing? It's literally this is not.
So here's the question, but here's the real question though. Like this is, I don't believe the city solicitor is a dumb man at all. But I do believe that, as is his obligation, he acts on behalf of the administration. But I can't, for the life of me, game out what would be politically beneficial to them for this to be on the agenda. I don't understand what the motivation was.
So I came up with the best case scenario. The best case scenario in my mind is that they wanted a home run win for the administration to say we stand against xenophobia and racism. That was the only thing I could imagine. But then, of course, the city solicitor basically said we have to allow xenophobia and racism because it's not illegal. So I tried to wrap my mind around it. It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
And I would say what seemingly in their grasping at straws to justify what they've done by allowing this on the agenda, they said, well, the solicitor said, well, it asked for a charter change and that has to go through council and blah, 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 and that's the purview of council. So I made no judgment on the content. So now you've opened Pandora's box. It's already on the agenda this coming week. There is one petition that says, request for a charter. It's a request for a charter change to ensure that the law department knows what the hell they're talking about. Basically, it's written way funnier than that. But and I'm usually not really into tactics like that, but I think it's absolutely hysterical because they made this bed. They made this bed.
And now anybody who just takes all you have to do now is take the form of the absolutely intentionally, by the way.
And you could submit a petition for the city council to declare that pigs can fly.
Exactly. Anything because it's a charter change related thing, which is ridiculous because now, and I want to say this, I don't want this to be missed. The Republican City Committee thing here, they did it on purpose. It actually is included in their petition that they wanted to use this as an opportunity to get notoriety. So now there's people that are friends of mine that like to do stuff to mess around with the city council. And in fact, if you remember, the mayor had to change the rule for Zoom because people were calling in on Zoom with fake names. Do you remember this? So they actually had to make a rule change because people would use the opportunity because you could just put any name you want, and some of the names were not appropriate for television, and they would say things that were crazy, and they were doing it on purpose. So now you've given a written way to do the same thing. So now this petition, if it goes through, someone is going to do something wholly crazy. And by the way, I think the one that you're mentioning, I laughed out loud when I read it. I thought it was hilarious. It's hilarious. And so now we're going to have to deal with that though. So does that, again, it literally shows the city council, the Worcester's government is becoming almost an open farce because we're going to now have to deal with people cracking jokes at the expense of our city government. And this is from a city government that says it wants to be the best managed city in America.
Well, but yet it's been imposed. This has been imposed on the city council because they allow it.
Yes, the city council should. Now, here's the interesting thing. The city council could argue themselves that any petition would go. So you brought it up at the beginning that Nico says any item that's questionable has to go from him directly to the city solicitor, and then they make a legal recommendation, and then the charter goes. The item doesn't make it onto the agenda, or it does.
I don't think it's a recommendation. I think the solicitor decides, from what I understand.
So if that's the case, here's my biggest question is, does the city council see those items before they go from the clerk to the city solicitor?
The city council in this city is on a need-to-know basis, and they don't need to know nothing. They need to know what, if you take it from the perspective of the administration, they need to know what they're told, And what they get, they ask for information, and what they get back is the administration's position papers.
I believe now. I don't have the standing because I'm not a city councilor. I believe that position in and of itself is illegal. That the city clerk should be providing the items to the councilors, and then the councilors can make recommendations on what items are on there, and then it would go to the solicitor, and the solicitor could give advice, legal advice, on what items are weird or not weird.
Or they could, no, I think what city council should do is one thing. They should have another vote to hire their own attorney.
Oh, that for sure. They should have.
And if anyone that votes against it has to stand up and raise their hand and say, I think Madison and John Adams were morons. And then we have to hang a sign on their podium that they have to leave there for the rest of time that says, I'm smarter than the founders. That's what they should do.
Listen, everything in that area, I was thinking in the still current nonsensical realm we live in. You're talking about this utopia where the city council has its own lawyer, and I didn't want to go there.
It's actually interested in representing the people of the city.
It blows my mind. So I hope the city councilors, don't be afraid. Speak up, because there is a growing groundswell for public media. I do want to mention real quick. People may not have seen this, but there is a Supreme Court decision that just happened the other day, and no one is going to notice this except for me and Tom. But there was a lady who is she's like us. She's on Facebook and she publishes things, and she was arrested for publishing somebody's name, and then the Supreme Court revoked that arrest. Long story short, they just returned it back. They undid what the Fifth Circuit had affirmed. In the Fifth Circuit, if you think the Supreme Court is conservative, the Fifth Circuit is at another level of nonsense. But anyways, we're not even going to go in there. But so this decision basically allows folks like me and Tom and Manny and Jen Gaskin and Giselle and Positively Suzanne and all the local major company media folks to continue to operate and not be beholden to a potential arrest or a muzzle because we wanted to publish something on Facebook. Facebook is considered, and Facebook has taken this position that it's not a publisher. It's just kind of the Wild West, right? So you can say whatever you want and you're not going to be subject to arrest. There's certain rules. You can't get threats and blah, 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 blah. There's all that other stuff. But in this particular case, city councilors, I want to say to you, don't be afraid, because we will publish the story. We will publish the story. We will cover the thing. I will show up at the city council. I will argue for you. Go ahead and fight back. This is nonsense, and it shouldn't stand. I don't even care if you have a different political position than me. If we disagree, go for it, because the only way that you can really truly represent the people of Worcester now is to fight back on this. Fight back on this.
Well, and so here comes the final stage of the absolute, just unbridled hypocrisy. That's all it is. It is unbridled hypocrisy.
It's nonsense. This story is so nonsense.
So forget what you feel about the conflict ongoing in the Middle East. The facts are that this council passed a resolution last October 17th, related to, it was worded in a way that, whatever. But it, basically cited it said, barbaric attacks in Israel and praying for citizens, including Americans, that were taken hostage, right?
Sure.
And of course, that happens October 7th, and then we're now 10 days later. War has already happened. Palestinians are just getting shredded by bombs already, right? So there's a lot of objection to that. Like, this could be, a peace resolution or something. You don't have to necessarily pick a side here when there's, now the people on the other side are being blown to bits. Was some of the feeling, at least among people that I talked to, not councilors, people, residents of the city.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, this got on the council. It was passed. Okay, it is what it is. You'd think that would be a precedent, but this week, led by somebody that is, we're not talking about an extremist person, a Catholic workers group, brought a resolution to city council. Brought a petition asking city council to take up a resolution, a ceasefire resolution, which has been done in other cities in the state. For it or against it, it doesn't matter. If you hate it, that's fine. You're allowed to. The point is, they didn't allow it on the agenda.
This week, they didn't allow it on the agenda.
Yeah, and what they did was they submitted this a week early. They submitted this last Tuesday, on a week early, and they got the email being rejected at 4:02 on Thursday, which the deadline is 4 o'clock for open records law. The open records law stuff has to be published on the agenda 48 hours, only business days before the meeting. So they sent it a week early, and they were notified after the deadline. So there's no chance to ask, like, what's the problem? Change it. No, just being rejected for being out of the purview of the council. So even though Rule 11, this dumb rule where city council allows the administration to interfere in its business, it just abdicates its power and responsibility.
So unbelievable.
That it makes no distinction. It doesn't list. See, here's the thing. This is what they're going to say, and it's a chicken poop argument, but they're gutless. So this is what they're going to argue: that Rule 11 doesn't mention resolutions, and so that was okay because Rule 11 doesn't have purview over resolutions. Councilors can bring resolutions. It only has purview over orders, which only councilors can bring, and petitions and other forms of items they take up. And that's what they'll say, and it's a garbage, gutless argument.
It is.
This is purely content discrimination. That's what it is. And so we now know. I can guarantee you, if anybody was unsure before, we now know how the solicitor feels about the conflict in the Middle East, because he just legislated his will through power he shouldn't have.
And well, I'll say this. And so I made this statement, and I know that people don't like what I said last week. I said I asked for both Mike Trainer and Nico to resign. And the reason I know you didn't like that, and that's okay. You're allowed to not like what I say, because we live in a free country, and you're actually allowed to express your opinion, Tom. I'm completely okay with you expressing your opinion. Now, so I've read the resolution request that the Catholic Worker Movement put in, that they organized. Okay, it has 1,000 people's signatures.
1,000.
1,000.
By the way, just fact insert. You only need to sign a petition to city council yourself, and as long as they allow it, as long as they don't want to, decide that they don't like your content, you will get on the agenda. I have a resolution or a petition on the agenda this week for this administration's unlawful wielding of its power to deny the public access to records, which is required by law to do. This lawless administration. But
it is very lawless. So, but what I wanted to say is this: the resolution that was proposed, whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. It's immaterial what it says.
Let them vote it down.
But what it says is not a legally binding issue. It's just a resolution. And if you take the weight of the conflict in the Middle East away, this resolution very much is the same as the tap dance young lady from last week. It's just an affirmation or not. And by the way, the resolution does not require a vote of yes or no. It just asks for the
resolution to be filed and voted on.
Yeah, it just needs to be voted on. That's it. And someone could file it, someone could deny it, all that other stuff. Well, everybody it's funny. Sean's talking about what happened. I was actually watching the Woot Nanny people on my phone respond to me while Tom was talking after me last Tuesday. So it was funny because I was watching you, and like they had just responded to me, so I saw the things they were saying about me. I actually watch their show on a regular basis. Anyways, it doesn't matter the content. This is 1,000 people that have gotten together, all residents of the city of Worcester, who want to have their voices heard on the city council agenda. The city councilors then could take up the petition or reject the petition. It's just a petition. That's it. It's just a petition. And so to me, why not let the people speak, even if you disagree with it? Now, it goes back to, in my opinion, very much there is a cowardice that exists in the government that they don't want to have to take a position. Although last year there was very, very quickly, as you mentioned, an immediate position taken by certain folks. So why can't we ask for war to end? Why is that bad? Why is it bad to ask for people not to be harmed? Why is it bad to ask our representatives that we elected and we voted for to discuss it? What's bad with that? Even if you don't agree, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. In fact, I read the resolution. There's parts I agree, and there's parts I don't. But it doesn't matter, right? That's okay. That's normal in conversation. You don't have to have word for word agreement. Tom doesn't like that I asked for Nico to resign. I don't think he has a problem so much with me having Mike Trainer resign. But
well, so let's talk about that for a second. Let's
Sure.
beat on that for a second.
Yeah, I have an actual conversation.
No, I don't. I'm not there yet. I think that's a pretty. I mean, not that you or I would have any influence over making that happen, but
No.
I think it's a kind of a serious thing to say. I'm not ready for anybody. No, I'm not there yet, because what I'd like to see is a system in place where the city of Worcester has a government that is a reasonable example of good governance in the United States of America.
Sure, I want that too,
and
I
not
think
the clown show that they're currently operating.
I think the only way that that's really going to happen is a total cleaning of the house. And so Mike Trainer has been an employee of the city of Worcester since 1989, and 1989, right? That is, in my opinion, part of our problem as a nation. People talk about term limits all the time, and they focus their term limits on elected officials. But Mike Trainer is not even appointed. He's a hired official. He's a hired official. The city manager is appointed. The city solicitor is hired by the city manager, right? So that he has been in influence in legal decisions for almost 40 years, 35 years, right? 35 years he's been. Now, he wasn't always the lead solicitor. He worked for someone else first, and then eventually became the city solicitor, right? The lead attorney for the city. And to me, sometimes your time has passed. And institutional knowledge and hierarchy isn't always a good thing. Now, what happens, why people get upset with me, is when I call for Nico to resign. And because Nico is like a rock star in the city of Worcester. Everybody
Nico's
loves
amazing.
him. And by the way, I like Nico. I actually work for Nico as an election inspector.
Yep.
And I think he runs a great department. But this issue is beyond his good management skills, because he does have great management skills. In my opinion, this process that has been developed, that isn't really his fault, it really is the city's council's fault, but it still exists, requires a moral stand. There has to be somebody somewhere in the administration who stands against an openly illegal operation. Now, it's not illegal in the way that we all want to talk about. They're not selling drugs. They're not importing things illegally. They're not, stuffing stuff in, at least not that I know of. I don't know anybody that says that. But what they are doing is they're denying the voice of the people while saying that they are held accountable by the city council. And it's absolute nonsense. And so my response is to go to the next end. At some point, someone's got to go. And so now no one is going to actually call for the city manager Batista to not get his contract renewed, right? Because they voted on that this week too, right? And everybody's going to be okay with that, even though we disagree with how the city's being managed. And he's just an extension of the Mike O'Brien administration. It's literally been in place for almost 20 years now. We've really had the same city manager, just 3 different iterations of it for this extended period of time. If you're happy with that, that's fine. Then keep on voting the way that you're voted. Keep on putting things the way through. They're going to continue to build big, giant buildings and focus on the developers. And they're going to drive all the residents of Worcester out of the city because they're going to price you out. That's their plan. And if you look at their strategic focus, that's what they want to do. And I'm saying I want them to resign or get fired or quit or move on or go to another job, because I don't want that in the city of Worcester. I think that there's a different way, and this is not the right way. So that's why I called for them to resign. And I think this is just one microcosm of it. And I'm okay if you don't agree. I'm okay with that. I just think that someone needs to get fired.
You know what?
No one ever gets fired in the city of Worcester.
Not that we find out about, at least.
Yeah.
Certainly not some departments. If I was the city manager, I wouldn't want to let go of Mike Trainer. You know why? Because he's willing to wield the power at his disposal in the interest of the administration. That's what you want with a good lawyer. That's what you want your lawyer to do.
Sure. And he gets all the public slaps in the face because people can say anything they want about the lawyer. And then, but again, I think that there is no mechanism in our city council for someone to be held accountable for what they say at the podium. I can go up to the podium and say literally anything at all. Up to the level of threats. I can't say any threatening things, right? But I can say anything at all. And there is no way to hold me accountable for telling the truth or not. None. Same thing applies to the city solicitor, the city manager, the mayor, all the councilors. They can stand in the dock in their official positions and lie. And there is no legal mechanism to hold them accountable. None, zero, zilch, nada, unless all 11 city councilors are voted out, and we voted new city councilors next year, and all 11
I think so.
are pro-charter.
I mean, the election will be decided by voters, obviously, and that is what it is. But I would say that there's growing discontent and from areas that you wouldn't suspect.
Yeah, and listen, this is I'm saying this with the fact that I have relationships with almost everybody there, and I like them. I'm not against them. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I was in the hallway outside of the mayor's office waiting for the mayor, and Nico walked by me and he said hi. And Mike walked by me and turned his head like we were, in high school, and he didn't want to look at me. So, I mean, it is what it is, and he's probably mad.
That's what you want from your lawyer, man.
Yeah, sure.
That dude is at war on behalf of the administration, and city council's oblivious to it.
It's crazy, though. It's nonsense. And of course, we all play this dance. We all have to dance around. I work for Manny J Media. I'm the executive producer there. Manny's a media figure, and so I have to really kind of figure out how I can and what I can say and dance around this, because I don't want them to punish Manny, which, by the way, I feel like at any moment they could do that, and that's ridiculous because the kid works so hard to have a voice for a particular community of people who have no voice within the city administration, which is the whole point, right? So it's you want people to get in the door, and yet I have this trepidation at any point that if I say the wrong thing, or if I go the wrong way, that it's going to be other people that are going to be punished. Is that how we really want the city to be? Now, I said many things about the mayor in the past, but the mayor and I have a great relationship. I will say this about Mayor Petty. Mayor Petty has been one of the most significant people in my life. There's no doubt about it. There's things that he's done I can't even say. For me, and he's an unbelievable human being in my mind. I don't always agree with him, right? But that's okay. I'm allowed to disagree with him, even though he's done good things for me. It's okay. It's a good thing. It's robust argument is good. But this city administration, in the manager's department specifically, if you disagree with them, they take the position that you are an enemy.
The enemy. Yep. Absolutely. And it is just. Look, in Augustus's office was just as sensitive. Little babies.
Ed is still. I have seen Ed in multiple times. Ed is still upset with me that I proved that he was a liar about the drones. He's still mad at me for that. He says it to me in public more than one time. He said it to me. I can't believe you wrote that article. You lied, Ed, about the drones. You lied about the drones. You lied. You were lying. The literal owner of the drone company, and you were on the phone the week you proposed the money for the dogs. It's all there, bro. You literally made up a story so you could get the drones in instead of just doing the right thing. By the way, I'm not against the drones. I'm just against this sneaky backroom process that they did. But the literal owner of I have receipts. I got the receipts, man. And he's still mad about it. So mad that it affected his relationship with Manny, and he didn't want to let Manny interview him for a year. And then finally he came into the office and blah, blah, blah. They squashed it, whatever. But he took it out on Manny because of my article that I wrote 2 years before Manny and I started working together. It didn't make no sense.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about here, because we're at an hour, and I just want to sneak one more thing in. There's been a lot of talk about transparency. It even says it on the website. Just to finish the last thing real quick. So Tuesday is going to be an absolute poop show at City Council, because if you don't think some significant majority of those 1,000 people are not showing up at council on Tuesday, you just don't understand what's going on. This is a little more than a little out there.
What's more than a little out there, John?
Tell me what was counterfactual. I'm always interested in being wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Prove away. Give me evidence.
Unlike the city administration, I'm not a baby, and I can take criticism.
Yeah, I'm down to be disagreed with. That's the whole point of this conversation, is that it's okay to be disagreed with. Waiting for comments to come through.
So we will respond, John, if you wanna provide a little more insight into your comment. Not afraid of criticism. Last thing I wanted to touch on is transparency is on the city website. We're not transparent. We don't do backroom deals. Remember that? And there's this incredulous response every time somebody says something like that. Oh yeah, well, no, that's fair.
Oh, that's fair. For sure. We were both ranting, John.
Absolutely.
100%. Yes, yep. We were.
That is a valid criticism, 100%. So, lastly, there's been a lot of talk about transparency. They're leading with that word with the current interim chief, who I support wholeheartedly. I think so far so good, to a strong degree, but this administration has said on the floor, it was backed up by some members of the council, that it responds to orders from city council. I mean, you could really summarize it as however the hell it feels like. So something comes before the city council, brought by a council. They vote on it. It passes. It's a request for some information of some sort.
Sure.
It is now the city manager is not part of city council, although he sits there and can intervene anytime he wants. He's not technically part of city council, so he is not covered under the open meeting law. And he said, and I had this confirmed from an administration spokesperson, that this is their position, that council can pass an item and he can deliver that any way he wishes, including orally in a one-on-one. So, in other words, what's the obvious extension of that? He can silo information any way he wishes.
He can prevent the public from understanding his response at any time. Yes, that's the position.
Well, not only that, but he can tell one counselor if he so chooses. Yeah. So he can now pick and choose the distribution of information. And there could not be a system that's less transparent. Now, it is true that there's probably they don't respond to all the orders. They get to pick and choose anyway, which is how they control council's agenda, by controlling their access to information. Nonetheless, if there needs to be some sort of reform of orders and how that's done, so that there can be, an actual paper trail, so then the public can be brought in on how the answers to these questions, instead of it being intentionally kept from them. I think that's a conversation worth having. I think the Municipal Operations Committee should have that discussion about how to reform how we do some of this stuff, so there aren't so many. And then there is an answer to this. It is the administration agrees that you are entitled to the information, and then you have hearings where administration officials are required to come in, something like subpoena power, which the administration could agree to, and then you don't have to do any reports because they're entitled to their own information and they'll gather it directly. But they will never agree to that, ever.
I agree, because they can be forced.
That might be oversight, and they don't want that.
Yeah, which no one ever does, right? And there's this phrase, and it gets overplayed a lot in a lot of dramatic movies, but this concept of power corrupts, and power corrupts absolutely, right? This idea that over time, the more power that you have, it leads to corruption. And Tom, you've made this argument about the John Adams and this writing of how we decided to come up with checks and balances, and it was specifically related, if contextually speaking, they were talking about an executive, the king in this particular case, who had become so powerful as to be able to make all decisions from the throne into people's houses, and he was making unilateral decisions all throughout, what the British Empire, constituted. And he wasn't the first king to do that. There was many other kings in many other
Yeah.
places, and we could go into the history of kings versus nation states and blah
Let's
blah blah.
not.
It doesn't matter. It's too much longer. The whole point is that there was a prediction by that group of early people that eventually the executive, if there wasn't some kind of resistance built in around it, would become naturally corruptible. Not corrupt, but corruptible. By what? The accumulation of power. The more power you accumulate, it's more likely that you're going to be a bad dude. Now, not everybody's a bad dude. And you can't say that, right? So not everybody is a bad dude. The more that I think about it, the more I see that President Biden, who I have massive policy disagreements on, has made a really interesting choice to step away from power. Whether he did that on his own or not, I don't want to go down that road.
Well,
but I do want to say
yeah,
it's a unique thing to step away from power. It's very, very rare in our modern human history that you see someone say, you know what, I'm going to give someone else an opportunity, or some other group, which is really what we're dealing with right now, is this extension of one group thought, is what I'm trying to say. Over the past 30 years, there's one approach and one thought process, and we're dealing with people trained and bred under that process. They don't want to give up any power. They don't.
So I think that it doesn't even have to be about corruption. I mean, I think it just, like, politics in its purest sense, right, is competing agendas, right? And this administration thinks that its agenda is what's right for the city, and it's willing to fight to accumulate as much power as it possibly can to be as unrestricted as possible in implementing that agenda, because it thinks that that's what's best for the city. We just look at this in its purest form, right?
Yeah.
And so, especially with a young executive, which he is. I mean, he's my age, and I'm no spring chicken. But as far as the position he's in, he's kind of young for that position.
He's not even 50.
You're right. And so, that power is going to continue to seek more power, right? That is just a natural progression. This is what the founders predicted, and that's what they were trying to check. But if you have, in a municipal system, you only have two branches. In a city municipal system, you only have two branches, and if the other branch isn't a check on that, then it is just runaway power, and that's never good. It's never good.
In fact, he's not even 40. He's 39.
So I mean, he's not doing anything that's crazy. I don't think. I think what he's doing is sort of natural. As far as the political machinations of it, I think what he's doing is very natural and predictable, because it's been predicted for 300 years. This is nothing new. What is different here is that there's just no pushback. There's just no pushback.
Well, so and maybe what you and I represent, and maybe some of the other people that I mentioned, some of the local media people, what we're saying is maybe we represent the pushback. Maybe there is some group of people that are tired, and maybe there's a coalition that could be developed really in the city of a group of voters and a group of thought, thinkers, people getting together to kind of push a different and alternative vision of the city. And by the way, I'm not talking necessarily about a political vision. What I think is important is how you value people, a value vision, and how you allow people to speak or not speak, right? So in this case, there's a lot of shutting things down if the person doesn't agree with you on the beginning. So it's like, hey, but I don't agree with that. Well, we're not going to listen to you. We're going to get rid of you and push you off to the side. And so the only way that you really get any traction is you have to say, well, I agree with this part, and then they let you talk. As long as you agree with the overall goal, then you can pick at some small parts, you know what I mean? And that's really not right. It means that the person really doesn't have a voice. And so it creates a system of unfair thought. Real quick, I think related to this, Sean had asked about Councilor Ojeda.
Yeah. Sorry. So I don't know the backstory. What I do know, what I've gathered is that one of the people there that was with the petitioners on that petition, he knows something about something that happened, because he was looking in that direction. I was watching it at home. I was there, but I left and watched it at home. And he was looking in that direction where the petitioners were. He was speaking to one of them directly. Yeah. And I have heard, I didn't hear it on the tape, I have heard that that person, when he was done, said something to the effect of, "I'm sorry." So
She did.
whatever he said was effective as hell.
So
But I don't know what the story is behind it.
So I was still there. I was sitting outside, and Council Hader stood up, and he was, if you look at the tape, he was
It was cold, honestly. He was in a place that was like cold when he looked at when he said that.
I've seen him in many public situations, and I haven't really seen him like that. Like he was confrontational, but it was like, I know what I'm saying, and you better listen to what I'm saying right now. And, I reached out to some people in the neighborhood and tried to ask some questions. From what I understand, this is all. I don't have everything, so I can't really say details. But what I can say,
be careful what you say, please.
Yes, there was some confrontation at some point outside, and a person was confronting the person that he was directing his comments to, and there was a group of young men who were immigrants who protected her in that scenario. That is what I understand took place.
Yeah, that's
and
what kind of what it sounded like.
I am trying to get one of those young men to talk for an article. But of course, that's kind of neither here nor there. That's what reporters do. We try to do it. I think I did it as best I could without revealing any particular information about a person, and I can't say for sure who the person was. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, but it was yeah, I mean, that's the word I would use for it. Like it was like he was upset to a point where he is just like he had reached zen of anger, and he had reached anger zen, and it was just the way he delivered it all was cold. It was like, and he was talking to one person in the room, and there was nobody else there, but it was.
And up until that point, it was like very interactive and engaging kind of city council meeting. You had people clapping and cheering and booing and talking. When he was talking, it was dead
silent. It was cold.
It was cold. The temperature went down in the room. Let me tell you that. It was cold. It
was like Larry Bird taking the last shot cold. Like it was cold.
Absolutely. Let's make it a little bit more modern, and Jaylen Brown taking the last shot, because he's the assassin on the Celtics right now. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's but come on. I mean, what, Larry have like 60-something game winners, 65 game winners, I think? Come on. The man was cold.
3,000 years ago. So, like, what
I mean? The man was cold.
There was dinosaurs in the earth back then. So now we deal with modern times.
Anyway, so yeah, but it was interesting. It was an interesting approach. He's been pretty kind of like light in his comments. He hasn't gone too hard on stuff. And I mean, that was hard. And it was an interesting moment for sure. Overall, it was actually kind of a good night. Really.
I think it was great for the city of Worcester to have that role. Now, I still think that argument, he actually.
That's right, Shawnee. That's right.
No, Sean's right, because I played basketball with Councilor Ojeda and
not him. Sean, talking about Bird.
No, well, just so you know, Councilor Ojeda, he is a
cold trash talker.
is a very good trash talker. I'll let you know. Those mama jokes come raining out from the crowd. So, anyways, what I want to say is, I don't know where I was going before Sean threw me.
Yeah. So anyway, overall, it was really. I mean, so here's the thing: is that should have been an hour and a half meeting, and it turned into 3.5 hours. Because, and I give credit to the mayor. Like when people show up, he's going to let them talk, and I think that's the right approach. I think
that's the point that we can look to. The mayor does let people speak, so there is some call from people that have been. I mean, he's been in the government for a long time here in the city of Worcester, and he's been influential for many, many, many years. And he believes in this kind of freedom of dialogue, freedom of conversation. And I'll say this: there's some folks that very loudly disagree with the mayor on a regular basis about a bunch of stuff, that he's allowed to do a lot of stuff to him. And so I give him credit. You have to give him credit. Eventually, he does push back, just like anybody would. But I would say that there's definitely a sense there that he would be open, and he did call for charter change just a few weeks ago, and so that's a good sign, you know. And I hope and the thing is that of course I want stuff to change tomorrow, right? And it never does like that. It's never, you know what I
So
mean?
there was two items. Candy actually held them last week because there was a dumpster fire, obviously, at council. Again, it ended up being actually a pretty good night with a lot of outside of the people that showed up with the petitioner. Everybody else was in pretty universal agreement on this was a terrible thing. Although you know, Attell's speech I thought was, our comments were, I thought, very heartfelt. It's just tough for me to not give the medal to Candy for best speech of the night, because I mean, she literally told him, take this S and get out of here, which was absolutely hysterical.
By the way, former chair of that same committee and former member, Donna Glorio, also, I mean, it was universally rejected.
She's still on the paperwork. She's still on the paperwork for as an officer or something of that.
Right. So,
which is fine. I mean,
no, it's completely okay. There's nothing wrong with opposition and other positions and all that stuff. It was good for the city to have that kind of open conversation about what the tone is. And by the way, they got their chance at free speech. The whole thing that we're trying to say is, if you're gonna give that freedom of speech available to certain people, then you have to give other freedoms of speech to other people that you may disagree with, like the petition that was denied this week, like my petition that was denied earlier this year, like the Human Rights Commission that was denied. And there's other petitions that were denied. There's some stuff that was like Cornelius's petition earlier this year too. There's been several petitions that have been denied on really spurious at best grounds. And the only thing that I can see that's consistent is that we won't sue, or we don't have the resources to sue. And if we did, then they would take it differently. And
that's exactly
really,
the and it's really and it's really hard for me to see, you know, the public records situation, which is basically similar. They're looking at me going, you know, I don't know what started, because it hasn't always been like this. It's just been really this year it's been like this. But they're looking at me, and it's almost like daring me to, you know, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? It's hard to take it a different way at this point. And so I did something about it. I just wasn't what they, you know, it just wasn't the thing that was going to cost me thousands of dollars. I put a petition on the city council floor, and you know, I'm probably going to ask somebody to hold it this week, because this week is going to be dominated by you know, other issues. But you know, I'm just gonna I mean, tell the facts. You know, 134 days, 132 days or something like that, business days, you know, 13 times longer than they're supposed to take. And something only happened when I made a phone call to somebody that could intervene.
And so, in this particular case, those emails that you're asking for, I think the reason that this has happened is because there's something there. And I have no problem saying I'm one of the sources, because it's related to the cable stuff, that there is something there. And what's going to happen is when it's revealed, it's going to really, really, really put a damage, in my opinion, into the city manager's position of accepting Spectrum back as a vendor in the city of Worcester. And so, and you know, people they can be as upset as they want about that. But if you think Charter Spectrum has been doing stuff the right way, you're crazy. You're straight up crazy. And so, in the end, Tom made the decision to, you know, look for those emails. And of course, there's a chain of people that were involved with them, and there's something there, and they don't want that there to come out, and so they're going to delay and push and punt.
But now that we've given all this information, the TNG is probably request them and get them in 5 minutes, because that's also how this administration works.
Which, by the way, I think what they're doing though is setting up a really difficult position for future administrations, right? Because you would then be able to say, I asked for the same thing, and you didn't give it to me. And so then, is there a discrimination lawsuit there again? And they're also saying to you, Tom, we don't think you're going to do it. They are saying that. They're openly saying it. And then what they did say to the Republican City Committee was, we think you might sue, so we're going to let you say this nonsense. And that's stupid. There's no other way.
And now they're caught chasing their tail. Now all you have to say is it's a charter question, and you can say any ridiculous thing you want.
But I would say this: I think they made a critical error by denying this petition that related to the ceasefire, because I pretty much know that this group is litigious. So they're not hugely massive, but there's lawyers that are part of the Catholic worker movement that live in the city of Worcester. So it's very possible that this turns into a lawsuit. And why would you want that for the city? The city, by the way, the track record on actual lawsuits that get past, the first stage of a lawsuit is really bad over the past 30 years. It's really, really, really bad. They've lost a lot of lawsuits. Do we really want city resources to be expended because they just don't want to let people talk? By the way, most of the time when people get the opportunity to talk, they say what they got to say, and then it kind of peters out. There's not everybody that has the passion to keep going on. But when you continuously don't allow people to talk, what do you expect? What do you expect?
Yeah, and when I mean, the overtly political decisions they're making now, they're chasing the tail. Like I said, it's really having no vision about what the hell you're trying to accomplish, and you're just reacting for political interests.
Yeah, and it's too bad. It's too bad because I think and again, this goes back to my choices in life. I years ago, I came back to the city of Worcester to finish my degree at Clark because I wanted to come here. I wanted to be a part of the city of Worcester. I believe in Worcester. I feel called. You can take that word however you want. That this is a place of value, and there's people of value here, and that we could do something really, really cool with this city, and it deserves it, and the people deserve it, and it should be the people of Worcester, not other people. If you want to come join us, fine, but it shouldn't be about the rich. It should be about the hardworking folks of this city, and we can do things to help people and make it a better place. And it doesn't have to be backroom shady deals and sneaky decision making. It doesn't have to be like that.
And this this attitude that whoever's in the appointed leadership position is the sole source of truth really just needs to stop.
And by the way, that's a bigger, broader argument that we've talked about many times. But the expert deference thing that comes in our society, by the way, experts are wrong sometimes.
They are. But you can also trust and verify. I hate to use a Reaganite term because it makes me want to gag a little, but it's true. Like, I mean, that's why we have oversight, but we don't do oversight in the city. It's all centralized under one person, so that if something goes wrong, it doesn't become public because of their sensitive needs to not be criticized.
And
like children.
And there is some value sometimes in putting someone in a position that has like deep experience in an area, right? So the Parks and Rec guy they brought back, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget his name. The guy they brought back.
Yeah.
But anyways, he's been in the city for a long time. He knows the parks. We could have another episode about just the parks in Worcester, but remember, there's several parks in the city of Worcester that are actually federally protected lands, like Elm Park. It's on the National Historic Register. There's actually some parts related to some of our Native American groups here in the city, and there's things that can't be done in the city in the Elm Park that can be done in other parks, and so it's a very complicated operation that has to take place. There's something like 70 parks or something like that, or 60 something, and so you need someone with the experience that understands how to do that, right? Like how to mow the lawn, which trees can be trimmed and not trimmed, which statues can be moved, which pieces of art can be shifted. Like you have to know those things, and so there's value there. So I'm not saying that there's no value to having someone with experience in municipal governance. Of course there is. That's obvious. What I am saying, though, is that sometimes people have been in a place so long, or a theory of how to govern has been in place so long, that the only way to fix it is to completely remove it. And so that's where I'm at this point. I think that it permeates City Hall, this thought and idea that they know best. But you don't, because we still have potholes and things don't work all the time. And hey, it looks like the Polar Park is closing businesses in the down in the Canal
Well,
District.
and look, you don't need to get everything. That's the thing, is you shouldn't be expected to get everything right. But when you get it wrong, you should expect criticism, and that's not the end of the world.
It's okay to be criticized. By the way, the check cashing guy is still holding out, and by the way, good for him, right? He's still holding out in that little district. He's going to get paid so much money for that piece.
Yeah, good for him.
And he was right. Remember, if you go back, this was right before COVID, right? There was a meeting in at City Council, and he went to the meeting, and there was that offer that was on the table back then for it was like $2.3 million or something like that. And he said no, and he said he wanted to see what the values of the abutting parcels would be worth, and he would then sell them, right? Which is of course Polar Park, the 2 new gas stations, and the 2 housing developments, which are all like 50 million and up, right? So good for him to think through that process. But at the time, the almost universal appeal, not Tom and I, but the universal appeal to the crowd was that he was an idiot for not taking the $2 million. Turns out he wasn't an idiot. Turns out he was pretty smart. So I mean, sometimes you can look like an idiot in public when calling for something or making a decision, and then it can come back around and people go, wow, actually he wasn't that dumb at all, or she wasn't that dumb at all, or they weren't that dumb at all, right? You can actually win back people even if you're criticized in public. So instead of being upset about being criticized, let them criticize you and then prove you're right.
Or listen.
Yeah. That's a good addition there, Tom.
I mean, I tell everybody, look, I mean, I try to be fair to people, and I try not to, rip anybody, and when I do, I talk about the administration because it is a team of people, and I talk about the council, which is a team of people. I'm not big on calling individuals out unless it's really necessary, like on school committee. When people on school committee act a fool, I will call them out. But generally, I try to be very fair to people. And if anybody, and I always tell people, if you don't think that that's the case, I want to hear about it.
Yeah, give me some facts. If you think that the thing I wrote wasn't good, or if you think the thing I said wasn't good, tell me why. I'm okay with that. I'm not gonna scream at you just because. And by the way, I mean, maybe this is part of it's because of the world we live in today, but the social mediaization of personal conversations has really, really taken root, right? So it's like you post something on Facebook, you get 75 comments about why you're an idiot. And then that's how people talk now too. So they talk in paragraphs about the thing that they don't agree with about the thing that you said. And then forever, that's a conversation. And it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to make mistakes. The best thing that ever happened to me was that I was put in a position to fail, and in failure, learning. And all the success that I've had over the past couple of years was related to learning from that failure. And it's okay to fail. It's okay. It's completely 100% normal.
We are 1,000 million hours over the limit. Yes, I just want to say real quick for Shawnee, because he understands the importance of 33. There is a clip, you may have seen it on YouTube, with James Worthy telling the story of Larry telling him to play before the play happened. That is absolutely hysterical. I know that there's a lot of stories about that, but the way Worthy tells it, it's not long, it's only a few minutes, but it's hysterical.
By the way, I'm not anti-Larry Bird. I just I want to give room to the current Celtics, and I want them to win like 7 championships in a row for one thing alone. I will always, 100% always, hate the Philadelphia 76ers, and I want them to be proven wrong. I want Embiid never to win, and I want these Celtics to win a bunch of championships just so the process never works. Don't let it work. Don't let it work.
You see, I can't even do it. You see, Danny's going to take the ball out. He's going to give it to DJ. And Robert's going to come over and set a pick for me, but that's just to free up Kevin so he can set the other pick. And if you come underneath, I'm gonna go to the hole. I'm gonna launch this floater. If you try and come over the top, I'm gonna bust this tree right in your eye and go home.
Oh man, Larry the legend.
Give me the big finale. Do you have a finale subject, or can we just bounce?
I do. And so for those of you, I see a bunch of you watching on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Tom and I are very grateful for you guys.
Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely.
Please continue to watch and please feel free to send us comments throughout the week about what you want us to talk about. But generally speaking, we focus on the city of Worcester and we focus on specific policy and stuff here. And we're very excited about the growth that we've continued to have. So thank you very much. But every week, at the end of the week, the best part of the show is when I ask Tom a question about like his favorite whatever, right? And so we've been going through it.
Just to Shawnee real quick, that wasn't only the X-Men. They doubled with, I forget who doubles on that play, but it's somebody real that doubles. He was just like, nah, net. All right, sorry.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a difficult one for you and it's not going to be basketball. It's going to be baseball related. And the reason baseball related, because we're sitting on the 20th anniversary of the ALCS in 2004, where the Red Sox came back against the Yankees. So every day this week, I've gotten to watch highlights of the Red Sox coming back and ruining the Yankees forever. By the way, the only team ever to come back from a 3-0 deficit, and the Yankees were the biggest losers and chokers of all time, being up 3-0 and losing. Okay, so anyways, Tom Marino, who is your favorite Red Sox of all time? And I'll give you can have one hitter and one pitcher.
Ooh. I mean, my favorite of all time is very easy. And that's Pedro, without question. This man, for a snapshot in time, was probably the best pitcher we've ever seen. He didn't have the longevity to call him the best ever, but for a couple of years, they're in the middle of the so-called juiced era, which I don't put as much stock into as other people do. Put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame, best hitter we've ever seen. Regardless of, I don't care what he was on, you couldn't get the guy out. You could not get the guy. He was RoboCop at the plate, for God's sake.
He was.
But no, it is absolutely Pedro. I mean, in the middle of that era, you know, that All-Star game, which I mean, it doesn't mean anything, but is awesome. The guy was filthy. I mean, you know, at his best, he was never really a 100 guy, but he was a 97, 98 guy with a changeup that was unhittable.
So, of course, I can't help but not go back to my youth. But I agree with you that Pedro Martinez, in my opinion, best pitcher I've ever seen, because I saw him and actually saw him live. I agree with you. He didn't have the longevity of other pitchers, but the greatest pitcher I ever saw pitch. And I actually saw Greg Maddux pitch once and thought he was amazing. But Pedro had 99 gas. So it was nothing like him.
I mean, Greg Maddux had no gas, but somehow you couldn't hit him. It's unbelievable.
Painter, right? So but Pedro was just as good a pitcher as Greg Maddux in anything. So Barry, I want to say quickly about the Barry Bonds thing, and Sean just said it. Barry Bonds had two legitimate Hall of Fame careers. One early in the late '80s, early '90s, and then had a second one afterwards. And I don't care about steroids. I'm a baseball guy. I do not care about whatever they were on, because they were all on it. And if anybody says otherwise, I hate that. The cheating scandals, when other people are doing the same thing, it's annoying. I don't care. Baseball creates its own problems. It doesn't know how to market itself. It's ridiculous.
Well, anyway. and I mean, you know, David Ortiz is on the same list as Manny. Manny's in. Manny's not in. David Ortiz is in. Like, Manny was one of the best hitters of his generation, for God's sake.
Manny was the greatest right-handed hitter I ever saw. Ever. I'd never seen anybody like it.
So I agree. And I mean just the year that Bonds hit 72. I mean, you could not get the guy out. He did not make outs.
It was
absurd.
Like 130 times.
It was insane.
The bases loaded. He was walking intentionally with the bases loaded. It's just insane nonsense of stuff. You think Shohei Ohtani's good, and he's great, by the way. But Barry Bonds, man, another level. So my two favorite Red Sox of all time, a pitcher and a hitter. My favorite pitcher of all time was Tom Gordon. I loved Tom Gordon, especially when he was a closer. I love those kind of like not before the great World Series winning championship teams. We were stuck with Red Sox teams that kind of got close and didn't really finish the deal. And Tom Gordon was the closer for those teams, and he was just so good.
That's such a weird pick.
I know, Tom Flash Gordon, but part of it's because he was so good that year that Stephen King wrote a book called "The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon," about a girl who went out to the woods. And I love horror.
I do like Shawnee's pick. He also picked Dewey Evans. That's a good one.
Dwight Evans,
with
in my
Pedro.
opinion, the best right fielder I've ever seen, especially at Fenway Park, is the right. But my favorite hitter of all time is another weird one. Well, maybe not so weird. People might understand it if they are similar in age to me. But it's Mo Vaughn. It's the hit dog all day long. I loved Mo Vaughn. I loved Mo Vaughn when he was with the Paw Sox, and that was the Paw Sox of like Mo Vaughn, John Valentin, Tim Naring, like that group of players as they came, Nomar, as they came up through the system together. But Mo Vaughn, man, I loved Mo Vaughn. But he has the most fraudulent MVP in the history of baseball in 1995 when he beat Albert Bell, who was a monster. And just an absolute
but
monster.
He was just, and that's the source of all the nonsense in the Hall of Fame it's based on who writers like and don't like.
Yeah, the writers didn't like Albert Bell, but Mo Vaughn got the MVP. It was so fraudulent. And then, of course, Mo Vaughn was involved in one of the weirdest controversies of all time with Dan Duquette. In today's sports thing, so you used to go to the Foxy Lady, you used to go to a strip club all the time, and they used that as like a bad thing against him. And eventually, he went to the Angels, broke his ankle, was never the same player. But if that happened today, it would never be a big deal. And Mo Vaughn was just a clutch guy. Of course, we ended up seeing the greatest clutch hitter of all time in David Ortiz after that. So you got used to it. But Mo Vaughn, man, I love that guy. I thought it was and I love those teams in the mid and late 90s. So Mo Vaughn and Flash Gordon were my favorite two guys.
I mean, obviously, like, Ortiz. And I mean, I'd probably go Manny. I really liked Manny, but if I was thinking about
Carl Everett. I love Carl Everett. The guy was a maniac.
Who hasn't been in this conversation yet is Jim Rice, who could hit the ball a country mile.
Oh, so it's funny because like, how do you like put people in categories? Jim Rice, when I was a kid, was clearly the guy who scared pitchers more than everybody I've ever seen, right? So he would just
if he came out to the mound, he would rip you to, he would rip your arms off before somebody could save you.
He was just, and by the way, I like Jim Rice on the when he was doing the media stuff. Jim Rice, just a great dude, was not treated well by the city of Boston, deserved to be treated much better, but then had he came back to the city and invested in the city.
He's been embraced, also should be a Hall of Fame player. Hall of Fame player. Has the numbers, led the league in 100 years in a row and stuff. Like, it's dumb.
It's crazy the people that are in the Hall of Fame and Jim Rice is not. It's crazy nonsense. Dave Kingman is in the Hall of Fame and then Jim Rice is not. And you just, I know his road splits were not great, but he was just a tremendous player. And there's Colorado Rockies in the Hall of Fame and Jim Rice is not. That's all you need to know. If you want to go home run splits as an argument, there's Colorado Rockies are in the Hall of Fame.
So great. I would just say that the man broke a bat by checking it, by a check swing.
Check swing, broken bat, home run. Check swing, and before the steroid era. And Jim Rice was not on steroids. Jim Rice was a huge human being. Not as big as Dave Henderson, but he was still a massive human being.
I still love when he goes into the stands after his hat because somebody's grabbed his hat and he goes into the stands like, I thought he was gonna. I still watch it today and I know what happens, which is a bunch of nothing. But you think he might kill the whole section of people.
He might wreck everybody because he just.
All right. Well,
by the way, if any former Red Sox want to come on and talk at the very end of our podcast, we're open to that as well.
I'm not open to anything further because this is now closing in on 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is 40 minutes over the cap. We're almost we owe luxury tax at this point.
Yeah, but we have all these adoring fans, and they're all here to continue the movement for me being cooler than you.
That's what it is. You were maybe cooler than me in the 80s with that hair, but.
Word it was. Look at this thing. Out of control.
All right. We are done. We complained for a long time. Worcester City Council is, please, for the love of God, exert your power. You have the ultimate power. If you don't do what we want you to, we'll get somebody else.
And people of the city of Worcester, go to the city hall. I know that it's hard. It's a Tuesday night, school night, and all that stuff. But if you can go, go. If you can't go, email your city councilors, write your city councilors, call them, talk to them, put notes on Tom's This Week in Worcester. Reach out to Manny, reach out to me. We will advocate for these things, and by the way, I don't care what your political affiliation is. If you're from Worcester and you want to be advocated for, let's talk about it. We're open to everything. Any idea? Let's talk about it. Let's get it out there, and let's talk about this future in Worcester that could be amazing if we work together. It could be amazing.
And you're always welcome to reach out to This Week in Worcester on the Facebook page, Twitter page, wherever you frequent. We also have a form on the website if you need to reach out, and I will get in touch. So we will, in fact, try to screw it up less next week, and until
and maybe not go 45 minutes over.
I would really not like to do this long, to be honest with you, because I think that besides Shawnee, who's apparently still with us because he's still mentioning Rich Gedman, who is hitting coach for the Paw Sox, as last I knew, at least. I mean, for the Woo Sox.
Batting average in 1981 was 285.
He was a fantastic defensive catcher, though.
He was.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
So anyway,
most fits though. Anyways, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Anyway, how do we get on a baseball tangent?
I don't know. Baseball.
So we will try to screw it up less next week. This Week in Worcester out. Thanks to everyone.
Bye, everybody.